Spencer Dutton was lost to the world, last seen sailing into an uncertain future, his fate hanging in the balance. But now, the silence is broken. He's back, and he's not alone. In the explosive continuation of 1923, Season 3 promises more than survival. It's a story of return, reckoning, and the powerful legacy carried by the next generation of Dutton men. If you thought the storm had passed, think again. The war may be over in Europe, but a new kind of battle is brewing in Montana. And Spencer's sons? They're ready to fight for the land, the family, and the truth buried beneath years of blood and sacrifice. The world has changed since Spencer Dutton vanished. War has scarred the land, economies have shifted, and the Dutton family has barely held on through tragedy and time. But in Season 3, Spencer returns, and with him, the answers to questions fans have been asking since the final moments of Season 2. Where did he go? How did he survive? And why now? As Season 3 opens, we find that Spencer didn't vanish without purpose. His disappearance was part of something deeper, a mission, a promise, or perhaps even exile. The writers carefully unfold his journey, revealing a man hardened by war but driven by love. Whether it's for Elizabeth, for his family, or for the ranch he once called home, Spencer's reasons for returning are layered and deeply emotional. He doesn't just walk back into Montana as a Dutton, he walks in as a father. Yes, Spencer is not alone. He's returned with his sons, children shaped by the time between seasons, raised in the echoes of his silence. They're young men now, and they carry not just the Dutton name, but the burden of its history. These aren't boys sheltered by a ranch. They've grown up with the weight of their father's legend and absence, and it shows. The first few episodes slowly reintroduce Spencer into the heart of the Dutton family, but nothing comes easy. Jacob Dutton, older and more cautious, isn't quick to forgive Spencer's long absence. Kara, ever the quiet strength behind the family, sees in Spencer's children the hope she feared had been lost. And Elizabeth, if she has survived the seasons between, is a ghost from the past that Spencer must finally face. The tension between them is thick, built on unresolved pain, missed time, and secrets too heavy to speak aloud. But Spencer's return is more than a personal reunion. It marks the beginning of a dangerous shift in the balance of power in Montana. The land has changed hands. Enemies old and new are watching the Duttons closely, and Spencer's reappearance only fans the flames. Some see him as a threat, others as a hero. But no one is ready for what Spencer has brought back with him. Not just sons, but secrets from the war, knowledge of betrayals, and ties to forces that stretch far beyond the Yellowstone frontier. The tone of this season leans darker, more introspective, but no less intense. Every conversation feels like it could explode. Every glance carries history. And as Spencer begins to uncover what has happened in his absence, what his family endured, and what was lost, the fire inside him grows. He's not just back to reclaim his place, he's back to protect what remains, and to make sure his sons never have to go through what he did. Season 3 doesn't hand Spencer a hero's welcome. It hands him a broken legacy, a bitter land, and a past that won't stay buried. And as the first section of this powerful season unfolds, one thing becomes clear. Spencer Dutton has returned not just to reconnect with his family, but to confront the very ghost that drove him away. And when he does, the entire foundation of the Dutton Empire will be shaken. Spencer's return may have stunned the Duttons, but the real shock comes in the form of his sons. Two young men, shaped by war, whispers, and wilderness. He's the soul of this new generation, someone who sees the ranch not as a battlefield, but as a sacred place that must be understood, not just defended. But in a world like Montana in 1923, idealism is a dangerous thing, and Elias's vulnerability is both his strength and the thing that might destroy him. As the boys begin to settle into the Yellowstone ranch, the old guard watches with caution. Jacob Dutton is torn. He sees the fire in Jameson's eyes and the sincerity in Elias's heart, but he's unsure if either is ready to take up the Dutton name in the way it demands. He fears they weren't forged by this land, that they were raised too far from its roots, and that maybe Spencer's return has come too late. Meanwhile, Kara Dutton, ever the emotional anchor, quietly becomes a guiding force for the boys. She sees the ghosts in Spencer's eyes, and in his sons, she sees the future. She begins to mentor them in her own way, Not through words, but by weaving them into the rituals and rhythms of ranch life. Meals shared in silence, letters burned in the fire, long rides into nowhere. Through her, the boys begin to understand that being a Dutton isn't about land. It's about sacrifice. And sacrifice always comes with a price. But peace doesn't last long on this land. An old rival, long thought gone, returns to Montana with a new flag and powerful allies. The government has begun eyeing the Yellowstone Ranch again, this time not just for expansion, but for something darker. A railroad deal, a land seizure, maybe even military interest after whispers of Spencer's role in a classified mission overseas. Whatever the reason, the Duttons are being watched. Jameson, ever the tactician, begins uncovering what the real threat is. He's sharper than people think, trained in strategy, survival, and deception. But he doesn't play by cowboy rules. He sees the Dutton enemies not as outlaws, but as systems, machines that can be broken from the inside. And this mindset puts him at odds with his uncle Jacob, who still believes in grit and guns. Elias, caught between his father's silence and his brother's ambition, begins digging into the past. He discovers things the Duttons tried to forget, about the land, about their alliances with native tribes, about broken promises and bloodshed. And most shocking of all, he starts to uncover the truth about Tiana, the indigenous woman whose story once shook the Dutton universe. Tiana's fate has been a mystery, but through old records and new whispers, Elias may be the key to bringing her story full circle. As secrets surface and new alliances are tested, the family finds itself split, not just by generations, but by ideology. Spencer wants to protect his sons from the violence he grew up with. Jacob wants to mold them into the kind of men who can defend the ranch with blood if they must. And the boys? They begin to realize that the Dutton name is more curse than crown. By the end of this section, the lines are drawn. The ranch is no longer just a home. It's a fortress, a battlefield, and perhaps even a graveyard for old ideas. Spencer's sons aren't just visitors anymore, they're players. And as the tension rises, one thing becomes clear. The Duttons may survive the storms from outside, but the storm coming from within, that could destroy them all. Just when the dust begins to settle on Spencer's return, the foundation beneath the Duttons starts to crack, and it begins from within. The tension between Jacob and Jameson grows into something combustible. What starts as quiet disagreements over how to handle the ranch's future quickly spirals into outright confrontation. Jacob, ever the old world cowboy, believes in the ways that built Yellowstone. Loyalty, land, and legacy upheld through blood and bullets. But Jameson, raised in a different world, sees those traditions as traps, outdated, emotional, and ultimately fatal. Spencer is caught in the middle, not just as a father, but as a son and a nephew. He respects Jacob, the man who once raised him, but he sees the truth in Jameson's words. The world has changed. Montana is no longer the wild frontier it once was. The enemies they now face wear suits, carry briefcases, and pass laws from behind polished desks. What used to be fought on horseback is now decided in courtrooms and banks. But Jacob won't listen, and Jameson won't bow. As this generational divide deepens, Elias takes a quieter path. He's still chasing the truth, particularly the mystery of Tiana, the indigenous girl whose story once exposed the darkest corners of 1923. Through hidden letters, forgotten ledgers, and conversations with aging tribal elders, Elias begins to uncover what really... In Season 3, we discover that Tiana became part of a growing resistance, a network of native families fighting to reclaim what was stolen from them, including land, children, and names. Her return to the story isn't loud, but it's deeply emotional. She appears not as a victim, but as a symbol of strength. And through her, Elias starts to see the ranch not as just a family heirloom, but as land scarred by history. Land that demands truth, not just ownership. But Tiana's reemergence brings danger. There are those who don't want her story told. Men with power, men with names, men who still profit off the silence. And when Elias begins speaking to her in secret, the Duttons unknowingly become part of a much larger conflict. It's no longer just about defending the ranch. It's about reckoning with what was buried beneath it. While Elias dives into history, Jameson dives into battle. He uncovers a quiet conspiracy forming in the valley, a coalition of ranchers, railroad tycoons, and government men who want to buy, pressure, or force the Duttons off their land. But it's not just about money, it's about erasing the last standing obstacle between the state's future and total control. Yellowstone Ranch is more than property. It's a symbol, and symbols, to men who fear them, must be destroyed. One of those men is Harlan Knox, a new name to the series, but one with deep roots. A politician with charm and cruelty behind every smile. He knows how to bend people without breaking them, and when that doesn't work, he knows who to call. Harlan once crossed paths with Spencer during the war, and the history between them is filled with secrets neither once aired. But Harlan knows Spencer's weakness, his sons, and he starts using them as leverage before the Duttons even realize what's happening. In the middle of all this, Elizabeth reappears, or at least her past does. Whether she survived childbirth or vanished after tragedy is a mystery the season slowly unfolds, but through flashbacks and haunting recollections, her presence is felt in every decision Spencer makes. And when a letter appears, one only Elizabeth could have written, the Duttons are forced to consider the possibility that she's still out there. This section of the story is where the suspense coils tight, allegiances shift, old wounds bleed again, and trust becomes a weapon. The Yellowstone Ranch becomes a pressure cooker, and every character is forced to ask, what are they willing to give up to protect what they love? Land? Blood? The truth? In the final moments of this section, a shocking betrayal hits the family hard. One of their own, someone trusted, sells information to Harlan Knox. And it's not just any information. It's the location of a hidden burial site on Dutton land, tied to a century-old crime the family tried to erase. If it comes to light, it could not only destroy their reputation, it could legally end their claim to Yellowstone. The betrayal comes from inside the house. But who did it? Jameson with his cold pragmatism? Elias with his obsession with the truth? Or someone else entirely? The storm that's been building finally begins to break. And as Spencer looks over the land he once fought so hard to protect, he realizes this isn't the end of a story. It's the beginning of a war. The betrayal sends shockwaves through the Yellowstone Ranch. A secret buried for decades, now unearthed. A name whispered through generations, now at the center of a legal and moral reckoning. The Duttons, long used to fighting enemies from the outside, must now reckon with the enemy within. And the land, once their shield, starts to feel like a trap. Spencer is the first to react, not with anger, but with silence. He knows what betrayal feels like. He's lived through it in war, in politics, even in love. But this is different. The land is sacred, and someone sold its secrets for power. The revelation that someone close to the family leaked information to Harlan Knox isn't just a scandal, it's a death sentence in this world. Because if the site in question, the one tied to a violent, unresolved chapter in Dutton history, becomes public, the legal foundation of the ranch could collapse. What the Duttons thought was theirs by blood could be taken by the courts in the name of justice. As suspicion spreads, trust begins to rot from the inside. Jameson is the first to be accused. His cold logic, his defiance of family tradition, and his willingness to modernize the Dutton way make him a convenient target. Jacob confronts him in a brutal scene filled with decades of unspoken tension, not just about the betrayal, but about what it means, his conversations with tribal elders, his pursuit of Tiana's story, his uncovering of records long hidden, all of it, now weaponized. He begins to question whether he's really protecting the legacy or just dragging its darkest chapters into the light. But the turning point comes when Tiana herself re-enters the story. No longer a myth, but a living, breathing presence. Tiana's return is quiet, but powerful. She confronts Spencer first, in a midnight meeting at the edge of the ranch, where the stars feel heavy with history. She tells him what his ancestors did, not just what the Duttons lost, but what they took. And for the first time, Spencer is forced to reckon with the idea that the land he loves was built on pain, not just sacrifice. She isn't there for revenge, she's there for truth. And she offers the Duttons a choice. Help restore what was stolen, or watch everything they built burn from the inside out. This is where Season 3 pivots hard. The Duttons are no longer just fighting for their land, they're fighting for the meaning of it. Spencer wants to take Tiana's offer. He believes redemption is possible, that a new generation, starting with his sons, could build something different. But Jacob sees it as weakness. He believes the past is buried for a reason, and disturbing it especially now, will only give their enemies more ammunition. Harlan Knox continues to tighten the noose. The information leak has given him just enough to begin legal proceedings. He brings in federal agents. He stirs up local opposition. He plants stories in the press. The ranch becomes surrounded not by soldiers, but by silence. No one wants to be seen siding with the Duttons now. Old allies turn cold. Neighbors keep their distance. Even some of the ranch hands leave in the night, too scared to stand on the wrong side of history. But in the middle of the chaos, a new lead surfaces. A witness. An old ranch hand who was there the day the buried crime happened. The day someone died on Dutton land and was never spoken of again. Spencer tracks him down in a nearby town, living under a different name. What he reveals flips the entire narrative. The victim wasn't just an enemy, he was family. Half native, half Dutton. A product of a forbidden relationship in the early days of Yellowstone. Killed to protect the name. Buried to protect the land. Forgotten to protect the legacy. And suddenly, everything makes sense. Why the land feels cursed. Why the family keeps repeating the same bloody cycles. Why Spencer left. Why he came back. Because the Duttons didn't just inherit the land. They inherited a sin. In the final scenes of this section, Elizabeth returns. Not a ghost, not a memory, but a woman reborn. She walks back into the ranch under a sky full of fire, figuratively and literally. Fields are burning, families are breaking, and her presence is like a match dropped into gasoline. She's not here for reunion, she's here with a truth of her own. She wasn't lost in childbirth. She left. Because she knew what the Duttons did. And she couldn't be part of it. And now, she's back. Not for Spencer. She's back for their sons. The storm that's been building finally breaks. Fire in the fields, tension in the blood, secrets laid bare. In the final arc of 1923 Season 3, everything the Duttons thought they understood about loyalty, legacy, and love begins to unravel. And it does so violently, beautifully, and without mercy. Elizabeth's return is not the warm reunion Spencer hoped for. She comes back carrying a purpose, not nostalgia. Her silence all these years wasn't out of grief. It was survival. She knew something back then, something Spencer never understood. The truth about the Duttons, about what the land really cost. Her departure was a statement. Her return is a warning. She doesn't just walk into the ranch. She walks into the war brewing inside it, a war for the future of their sons. Jameson, sharp-eyed and unflinching, sees her arrival as another variable in a game he's already begun playing with deadly precision. He doesn't flinch when Elizabeth reveals she's been working behind the scenes with those trying to expose Yellowstone's buried past. To him, truth is power, and power is how you win. He wants to use her, use the scandal, to take control of the narrative and outmaneuver Harlan Knox before the federal case against the Duttons can be sealed. But Elias doesn't see her that way. He sees a mother, a piece of the puzzle that's been missing from his soul. He confronts her not with anger, but with questions. Why did she leave? Why didn't she write? Why now? And the truth stuns Elias. It breaks him. And it also clarifies everything. The Dutton legacy wasn't just built on hard work and sacrifice. It was built on silent stories and erased lives. And now that those truths are out, he sees the path forward not through violence, but through restoration. Meanwhile, Jacob Dutton, facing the collapse of the empire he held together for decades, does what Duttons have always done when the walls close in. He prepares for a fight. He gathers what's left of the loyal ranch hands. He arms the property. He draws lines in the dirt, not for negotiation, but for war. In his mind, this is the end, the last stand. If they're going to lose the land, they're going to lose it on their feet. Spencer, torn between his uncle's dying worldview and his son's evolving ideals, tries one last time to broker peace. Not with words, but with action. He goes to Harlan Knox himself. In a tense, slow-burning scene, he offers Harlan something that no Dutton ever has. An open deal. Land for land, truth for peace. But Harlan, drunk on his own ambition, refuses. He wants it all, and he's already filed the motion to seize the ranch through legal eminent domain. That's when Spencer makes a decision that changes everything. He signs over partial ownership of the land, not to Jameson, not to Jacob, but to Tiana and her people. In a single moment, he redraws the history of Yellowstone Ranch. It's no longer just Dutton land. It's shared, it's consecrated, and legally, it puts the entire government case into question. Because the land now includes tribal ownership, any federal seizure becomes a jurisdictional nightmare. Harland is furious. The legal system stalls. The land survives barely. But the cost? It's heavy. In the chaos, one of the ranch hands loyal to Jacob lashes out. A gunshot. A scream. In the crossfire of this final standoff, Jacob is fatally wounded. He dies not in battle, but under the stars, on the porch of the house he built. Spencer at his side. Jameson watching in silence. Kara holding his hand. His last words are not of land or power, but of regret. He admits he was wrong. That maybe survival wasn't enough. That maybe the truth matters more than the name. As dawn breaks over the valley, the fire finally dies. The enemies are scattered. The lawsuits are buried under red tape. The land, scarred but standing, belongs now to more than just the Duttons. It belongs to those who bled for it, those who were buried under it, those who survived it. In the final scenes of Season 3, we see a different ranch. Elias teaching local children both white and native, under the same sky. Jameson riding out with a ledger in one hand and a rifle in the other. Still sharp, still strategic, but now tempered by something new. Perspective. And Spencer, older, quieter, standing by Elizabeth as they watch their sons live in the world they tried so hard to build. One last moment. A burial.